Good afternoon, everybody. It's Tom here, and the host of Up with America. Over there is Glenn Dye, our producer. He's doing great today, right?
Absolutely.
And it's a little bit different today because we're broadcasting right after the Clemson game. So every now and then we get bumped because people love to watch Clemson football or listen to it. So that's okay with us, right? So, however, I have to tell you something, Glenn. I was all excited about this show, and I was all pumped up and positive, especially because you'll see that all the music I picked is children singing American songs.
I did see that.
The problem with it is that everything since then has gone to hell. I'm telling you what.
In a handbasket.
It's just been a nightmare of awful stuff, and you're going to hear a lot more about that shortly. We have some wonderful guests here with us today. It's going to be really great. We even have a caller who's already called in, who frequently calls in at the beginning of the show. So
yeah, but he hung up.
He hung up?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Richard, you're killing me.
You're killing both of us, dude. Okay, well, if that's the case, Glenn, let's go to cut number one.
Hold on, Richard's back. Hold on, let me get Richard on the horn here.
Okay.
I got a little technical thing to do here, and
okay, we'll get Richard in. We're going to get Richard on the horn.
No, I don't. I'm here.
Hello, Richard.
Hey, Richard. You know what?
What?
You know, you're getting paid a lot of money. I could fire you for less.
Well, I can't help it, man. The call dropped and just now getting back in. So it's on your end. You're fired.
Okay.
Hey.
It's a deal then. All right. I know you got something on your mind today. What is it, my friend?
You know, we sit here and look at what's going on in America, and we point our fingers to a lot of things. But I think we need to not point a finger, but look in the right direction of bringing God back into America. And, I mean, God hasn't left. We've left God. And it goes back to an old saying that I heard a long time ago, and I'm not quoting this, I'm paraphrasing this, but it says, if we do not accept the existence of a supreme being, that God is the source of our moral law, then what more do we have to offer than Karl Marx?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I thought I'd struck a nerve there.
Yeah, you certainly did.
And I think when we look at the alternatives, the right and the wrong, the good and the evil, and there's a lot of people through the ages that have talked about things and spoke and written and pushed things about the evils of communism. And many people are on the level, and I'm one of those, that communism is just a tool of Satan, for those of you that believe in Satan, to destroy the freedoms of mankind.
Could not agree with you more. I really couldn't. You're exactly right.
Yeah. So when we look at this, you know, freedom is eternal. It's a God-given principle. When you go through the scriptures from Genesis on through, he's always talking about freedom, and he's talking about man's agency. And agency is equated to freedom. That you make your own choices, you decide what you want to do, you decide what your family's going to do. If you're running a business, you're free to produce, you're free to fail, you're free to set your prices, and use your talents and get the most out of them to help others. So when you take this God-given principle and start looking at the big spectrum of how it reaches into all of everything that we do, and that's why communism, Karl Marx, all of that away. And he wanted to do away with the family, destroy the family, take away your property, take away your business, make all your decisions for you. You become a ward of the state.
Okay, so let me interrupt you because this is perfect timing, And I'm probably going to run over here, so just listen up, my friend, okay? Richard Medlock is on the phone with us today. I prepared some quotes about God and this country, okay? You know, when Up With America was founded, as Randall knows, the whole basis of Up With America is on the founding fathers and what they believed, because if we turn back to them, the answers are already there. We do not have to invent new answers. So let's address a couple of things you just talked about. What did Thomas Jefferson say on what we would call the New Left, socialism, Marxism, and communism? Jefferson said, when the people fear their government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty. James Madison said, also, as far as I'm concerned, as far as the New Left, socialism, Marxism, and communism, there are more instances of the abridgment of freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachments by those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations. Jefferson also said, if I predict happiness for Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them. And then Washington said, Almighty God, we make our earnest prayer that thou wilt keep the United States in thy holy protection. Listen, anybody who believes that God was not in the foundation of this country is just wrong.
I agree.
We can debate, Richard, all day long about deism and Christianity and all this stuff, but these people believed in God. They believed in a supreme being, and everywhere in our documents that stuff exists.
Well, when you look at the Judeo-Christian values and principles they based the Constitution on, that they based forming a country on freedom. Your First Amendment is all about freedom. That was the cornerstone of the Constitution, in my mind.
Yep.
That First Amendment, it's based on freedom. And when you take the Constitution and the establishment of this freedom and a government that is to protect those God-given freedoms, the inalienable rights that the Founding Fathers believed in, then we're back to square one on where our understanding is.
Okay,
now,
so you have met Barbara Arthur. Remember her? She's running for Congress.
Yes.
She was in Myrtle Beach yesterday, and she gave us one of her great speeches. And, you know, one of her main things is always to refer to John Adams, and you and I know this quote very well. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the governance of any other. That's the bottom line here. And the Founding Fathers knew that.
It is the bottom line because it is through righteousness that the Constitution is upheld.
All right. So now let me ask you, this is really important, Richard. I hate to interrupt you, and we're going to have to go in about 2 minutes or a little bit less, but I want you to answer a question for me. I had a couple of people last night who listened to this fantastic speech, and everybody was very excited about it because everybody knows we have to turn back to God. And we had one guy or two people actually came up to me afterward and said, I loved the whole speech. The whole message was great, except she's got to stay away from using God all the time. What, are you kidding me? She's got to get back to using it. That's what we have to do. Everybody's afraid of God. Everybody's afraid of using the term God or referring to God in politics. I think it's time to bring God back to politics, frankly. What do you think?
That's interesting that you bring that up, because I put a post on Up With America Facebook today that basically says, you're afraid to speak your beliefs because you might offend someone, then your beliefs don't mean that much to you. And so when you have somebody say, no, let's not say God. We can't use God. Why can't we?
We can.
So, yeah.
That's the bottom line. We can. And listen, we always value your input, and this was especially important today and very appropriate for what we're going to be talking about all day. So, in fact, I've got a guest here that I'm so excited about. We'll introduce him shortly, but we're going to take a short break. Is that all right with you?
You want me to stay or go?
You can stay for a couple minutes. We won't be able to talk too long, but stay for a couple minutes. All right?
We'll be right back with more Up with America with your host, Tom Herron, right here on Talk.
How about that, Glenn? How about that? They actually sing a song called God Bless America. Yeah. Everybody sings it, everybody knows it, and then everybody says, we really shouldn't talk about that.
Well, we sang that in our schools growing up.
So did I, absolutely.
Yeah. Said to pledge allegiance every day.
Of course, when I was growing up, it was so many years before you that it's hard to remember that far back. You know that, right?
Well, I'm not that far behind you, Tom, but quite honestly, it was a different time then.
It was, I know.
The time of air raids.
Oh, yeah. Get under the desk, everybody.
Well, we always lined up in the hallway on our knees with our head tucked down.
That was one of my favorite ones.
Yeah,
I love that one.
If you're going to go out, you're going to go out in a tucked position, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, let's get back to Richard just for a minute. Richard, if you're with us, let's give me a couple of minutes and wrap up your whole thing about God, and I think it's so important. That's why I wanted to come back with that song.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back.
You could be fired for that too, you know.
to my original thing about the Constitution and God and righteousness and morality. So let me ask a question, and then I'll give a couple of ideas of the way we can do this. Will we be among those who will bear the Constitution away from the very verge of destruction? Will we be part of that number that does that? Now, to do that, number one, we must be a righteous and moral principles, a moral people, and we must live the gospel principles as we know them that is taught to us by our faith, whatever faith that is. The next thing, we must learn the principles of the Constitution and then abide by its precepts. When you put righteousness and Constitution, well, let's put it this way. You put the Bible and the Constitution next to each other, you should study each one of them diligently. That's how you're going to understand what to do and how to move forward to bear the Constitution away from the very verge of destruction.
Okay, so here's where we are. Okay, first of all, you know my answers to those questions, but let's do this. I'm going to tell you to hang on if you want to, although I've got a guest here. What I'd like you to do is listen to somebody who knew quite a bit about this, Ronald Reagan. He's going to talk a little bit about God in America. And then we're going to go to Prager University, who then will talk about were the founders religious, because there's no controversy there in my mind. Some people think there is, but your input has been invaluable as usual, Richard. Stay with me or hang up.
Well,
it's your choice.
I'm going to have to hang up because I've got a meeting in half an hour.
Okay, no problem. But thank you as always. Glenn, let's rock and roll and let's hear what Ronald Reagan had to say.
I've always believed that we were put here for a reason, that there is a path, somehow a divine plan for all of us and for each one of us. And I've also always believed that America was set apart in a special way, that it was put here between the oceans to be found by a certain kind of people based on a quality that these people had, but that they came from every corner of the world. And a country then was created by men and women who came not for gold, but mainly in search of God. They would be free people, living under the law with faith in their Maker and in their future. It's been written that the most sublime figure in American history was George Washington on his knees in the snow at Valley Forge. He personified a people who knew that it was not enough to depend on their own courage and goodness, that they must also seek help from God, their Father and Preserver. Where did we begin to lose sight of that noble beginning of our conviction that standards of right and wrong do exist and must be lived up to? Do we really think that we can have it both ways? That God will protect us in a time of crisis, even as we turn away from Him in our day-to-day life? It's time to realize, I think, that we need God more than He needs us.
Boy, is that not the truth. I'm going to introduce you to Randall Wallace in just a moment, but everybody would agree, I think, that this is a guy, the voice you just heard and the person that just was, is somebody that this country could always use and could always benefit from, because he always said the right thing at the right time, didn't he? He was amazing. I'll tell you who else has the right thing at the right time, and that's Prager University. We're going to go to Prager University and listen to a clip from them about where the founders actually religious. So let's go with that, Glenn.
What were the religious beliefs of the founding fathers of the United States? There's been a lot of controversy surrounding this subject, but there shouldn't be. Because of their prominence, I will discuss George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin, our nation's first 3 presidents, and the man referred to as the first American. All of whom, even if some did not individually adhere to Orthodox Christianity, were steeped in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Here's what we can say for certain about their religious beliefs. 1. All of the founders believed in a transcendent God, that is, a creator who exists outside of nature. 2. All the founders believed in a God who imposes moral obligations on human beings. 3. All the founders believed in a God who punishes bad behavior and rewards good behavior in an afterlife. The notion that any of the founders believed in an impersonal deity who merely created the universe and then left it to itself is false. All of them believed in a God who, as Franklin said at the Constitutional Convention, governs in the affairs of men. Let's start with George Washington. Washington's writings, both public and private, are full of references to the Bible. This is certainly true during his 8 years as the first president of the United States. Here is Washington at his first inaugural. The propitious smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right which heaven itself has ordained. In all likelihood, Washington was an Orthodox Christian. Like Washington, Benjamin Franklin also referenced Bible verses, stories, and metaphors throughout his life. His calls for prayer at the Constitutional Convention were typical of his attitude. Franklin, who had his own unorthodox views, summed up his faith this way: that the soul of man is immortal and will be treated with justice in another life, respecting its conduct in this. While the religious views of Washington and Franklin are clear, those of John Adams and Thomas Jefferson are more complicated. Adams referred to himself as a Christian throughout his life, but did not believe in traditional Christian doctrines such as the Trinity or the divinity of Jesus. Nonetheless, before, during, and after his tenure as president, Adams repeatedly asserted his admiration for the Christian faith. Those general principles of Christianity are as eternal and immutable as the existence and attributes of God, he wrote. Likewise, Adams spoke of his great respect for the Bible. The Bible is the best book in the world. It contains more of my philosophy than all the libraries I have seen. Those who suggest that Adams was against religion like to quote from a letter he wrote to Thomas Jefferson, in which he said, "This would be the best of all possible worlds if there was no religion in it." Unfortunately, those who cite this line never quote the lines that immediately follow. But in this exclamation, I should have been as fanatical as the skeptics of religion. Without religion, this world would be something not fit to be mentioned in polite company. I mean hell. So, those who quote the first line without quoting the subsequent lines are either unaware of the full comment or are deliberately misleading people as to Adams's beliefs. Like Adams, Thomas Jefferson did not adhere to Orthodox doctrine. Yet he often declared himself to be a Christian. I am a Christian, he said, in the only sense he, Jesus, wished anyone to be, sincerely attached to his doctrines. As one of the leaders of the American Revolution, his views are well known. After all, this is the man who wrote in the Declaration of Independence that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You can't get a much more explicit statement of belief than that. These 4 founders, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, and Franklin, were practical men with a sober view of human nature. They understood that man is morally weak, and that religion provides the best encouragement and incentive to be good. It does so, first and foremost, by teaching that choices have consequences, not necessarily in the here and now, but most certainly in the hereafter, meted out by a just God. It should come as no surprise, then, that Jefferson in his second inaugural asked for the favor of that being in whose hands we are, who led our forefathers as Israel of old from their native land. So what were the religious beliefs of the founders? They were diverse, but all of them were rooted in the Judeo-Christian values found in the Bible. I'm Joshua Charles, writer and researcher at the Museum of the Bible for Prager University.
Okay, you've been listening to Up with America Radio. It's Saturday, November 20th. We're on Talk 94.5 and at talk945.com on the internet. We have so many listeners around the country that's kind of fun to do it that way. When we come back, I'm going to introduce you to a dear old friend of mine who's got a great new program that he's working with, and I look forward to that. So we'll be back in a couple minutes, folks.
This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me.
This land was made for you and me indeed. And I'll tell you what, one of the most important things that all of us need to always remember and always do, and what Up With America is all about, is study our history, understand where we're coming from, learn from our mistakes, and do it right the next time around. That's all there is to it. It's the bottom line. I have a guest with me here in the studio today named Randall Wallace, who Randall and I go back 25 years easy, right?
Yep, most likely.
Sometime in the mid-'90s. Randall, some of his friends call him America's City Councilman, right? Isn't that right?
American City Councilman, yeah.
By the way,
I got tagged.
By the way, do you not love this guy's voice? Man, you should be on the radio with me.
Yeah, he sounds like he should be on the radio.
Yeah,
probably
unlike
back it up a
me.
little bit.
See, everybody says I have a face for radio.
Well,
Hey, they tell me that too. We must be brothers.
Yeah,
From
apparently.
different mothers and went to
There you
different
go,
schools
exactly.
together.
So anyway, Randall has pretty much grown up his entire life here in South Carolina.
I was born and raised here in Myrtle Beach.
Born and raised here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and has been a friend of mine for a very long time. In fact, quite frankly, if I was thinking about this today before you got here, this whole idea of Up With America, when I came up with it, you and I sat down and worked it out together and put the whole thing together, and then we sort of drifted apart for a while,
Yep.
but I'm glad we're back together.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see it's doing as well as it's
It
doing.
really is, yeah. Not only the radio program, but the organization itself. Because now more than ever, we need it. That's for sure. Randall is also the author of a book that he handed to me, Always Vote Your Conscience. That's perfect. That figures.
Always vote your conscience. Don't take it personally. Don't fight the same old battles over and over again.
There you go.
Some
Amen.
lessons I learned in my years in politics.
Great advice for a country, but great advice for a marriage as well.
You're not kidding. And in fact,
Probably.
Randall and my late wife, Jackie, who, by the way, she would have passed away 13 years ago this Thanksgiving Day.
Oh.
Isn't that amazing?
That is hard to to believe. Actually, it's been that long ago.
She absolutely adored Randall Wallace, so much so that when he decided to run, I don't even know what you were running for, chairman of the party.
I was running for chairman for the party, and the guy that was running against me was really super dapper, and I'm a lot of things, but that ain't one of them. And
so
she put all my clothes together. So that they matched, and then I would look the part. And I've still got stuff hanging up in the closet at my house with the shirts and stuff matched up from that, so that I don't ever look.
I mean, she would. I'll never forget. She went up there in the morning and came back at dinner time and said, "Holy smokes, man! I spent a whole day with this guy. He's got all these great clothes. He just doesn't know which ones to wear. That's all." So she matched you up, and you look pretty good for a while.
Oh yeah, I still, like I said, and if I buy anything new to replace it with, I kind of match the colors back up.
I don't know if you heard. Last week or a couple of weeks ago, we had an interview with Robert Shelley talking about his Project Amazonas. And at the end of the show, he said, "I have to take a second and tell you how much I loved your wife." And they really had a special relationship.
Robert's a good guy too, and that's a good project he's doing.
It's a great project. Randall, tell us what you're doing now, because we're going to hear a clip of it just at the beginning, because Randall started something that all of us could benefit from, and it's really cool what he's doing. He's got a series of podcasts. So tell us all about that.
Well, it was originally a part of the book was the original idea, which was to take a look at the World War II generation that I admired and grew up with in politics, Bob Dole and Dan Inouye and Strom Thurmond and Robert Byrd and the examples of leadership that they set. And so the first 11 episodes was along that line, really looking back at history and the relationships they had and the fact that they trusted one another, even though they didn't agree, and they didn't fight to the death and hate each other the way, unfortunately, I think the crowd that we've got running the country now does.
Yeah.
And it kind of morphed into sort of a history podcast, going back through and looking at examples from basically that same generation. I did some stuff on World War II and on General MacArthur being fired, which were in the book. And then I decided, as tough as things are right now and divided as the country is right now, there is a period of time in which there's a wealth of historic stuff out there on the 1960s and early 70s, from the assassination of John F. Kennedy through Watergate and President Nixon and President Johnson's terms. And we could take a look at this pretty in depth, and you can see the examples of what they did right and wrong and the divisions in the country. And then sometimes as you're going through it, you stumble on some things that you catch on that you can see now are great examples of things they do now, which you're not knocking the media, which I guess we're not really media people, but I have found a clip on one of the shows that's not up yet of Dan Rather coming back in the night that Richard Nixon got elected with 49 states. And instead of, hey, this is a landslide, he gets on TV, and Indiana had just come in, and he says, Indiana, the most southern of the Midwestern states, home of the Ku Klux Klan, votes overwhelmingly Republican, and it voted for Richard Nixon tonight. I thought, well, here is an example of the media driving the narrative that you probably need to start watching, because you're seeing it now if you're watching CNN or MSNBC. I'll pick on the liberals first, or even Fox. Yeah, CBS. All of them are driving an agenda, and you don't even know your history. And the show that one of the reasons the show that probably going to show a clip for here in a second about Kent State, the shootings that happened there, and then later on President Nixon went to the Lincoln Memorial. There's a narrative out there for the few people who've ever looked at 2 seconds of it who think Richard Nixon's responsible for that shooting. Like he went out and ordered the National Guard to do something. And the truth is that it was a governor's National Guard that were out there on the campus. They were dealing with a problem in Ohio. He had nothing to do with it. And then they attack him for being this weird trip to the Lincoln Memorial. In fact, he was upset and went out there to try to reach out to these people. And I don't think people know their history well enough to even know. So then you hear this kind of generic I don't know what the right word is, but overview that has no resemblance to the truth.
Absolutely. In fact, James Madison said this about the media. He said, a popular government without popular information or the means of acquiring it is but a prologue to a farce, a tragedy, or both. It's so true today.
And we're living a farce or whatever. I think in one of the shows I was so put out after the January 6th deal all the way around, with the performance all the way around with everybody. And sometimes I think our leadership on the national level has become a collective national embarrassment. And that coming from me, a guy who I think if you were going to knock me in my time in the political office was that I was a bit of an establishmentarian type of figure.
I would say that's true.
And yet even I have now gotten to a point where this is embarrassing what's going on in this country.
We have to fix it. So, Glenn, you know what? People need to. By the way, Randall, where would they find your podcast? Where would they go?
It's on Apple iTunes and Spotify and all that. Buzzsprout was the host, but it's called Bridging the Political Gap with Randall Wallace, and it's wherever you get your podcast.
So here we go.
iHeartRadio too.
We're going to just hear a couple of minutes at the beginning of one of his podcasts, Bridging the Political Gap with Randall Wallace.
Here you go.
Let's hear it.
Tear gas first started down the Commons, then the guard moved up on both sides of Taylor Hall and forced the kids off the Commons. Then one group, I don't know how many there were, 50 maybe, perhaps more, perhaps less, moved down into the practice football field.
After you feed them, then what will we do? Will you ask them to leave?
They've got grievances, they've got demands. The demands on both sides. We have to talk.
And then there were a whole lot of kids around them. A few kids were throwing sticks and stones, but that was only a handful, not more than 10, 15. And then the guard shot some tear gas up on the hill to disperse the crowd, and the kids picked it up and threw it back.
We'll fly out. Guard will make a perimeter, a circle, right out in here. From the right, you move out. You start a big circle around here.
You don't talk during a state of emergency, Mike. You know that.
Look,
Come on.
I'm sorry, but
we'll
I don't
talk
want
as
people
soon as
shot.
we get this
I
settled
don't want
down.
people shot on this campus, just as a citizen of this campus.
Who wants people
All
shot?
right, but they're sitting quietly.
Okay, will you ask them to leave?
This area immediately. Leave this area immediately.
And all of a sudden I heard the shooting. And then I saw people dropping to the ground, and then I fell to the ground also, because I couldn't walk anymore. And
what the investigators have to determine.
Okay, so I'm telling you what, Randall, that talk about bringing back memories to me. That to me, and I have said this forever, that was for me what changed my life. When that happened, that next weekend we went down to Washington and demonstrated against it. And I believe that the Kent State affair, that what happened out there, turned me from somebody who was an activist, who was involved in everything, to somebody who became greedy and just wanted to make a bunch of money and get away from it all, because that was the worst thing I've ever been through.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
18-year-old American men and boys shooting other 18-year-olds on a campus. What a nightmare.
And what's even sadder is the students that died two of them were going to class. One of them was standing there. They weren't even part of the protest or the whole situation.
Just horrible. Okay. Well, let's take another break. I'm so glad Randall's with us today. This is really very informative. Thank you.
Their way through waist-deep snow on a cold Colorado dawn. Did you ever see the sun go down in Hawaii or see the stormy waves break over the rock-bound coast of Maine? Or have you ever seen an eagle fly up out of the mists of Alaska, or a big October moon hanging full over the still Dakota Badlands? Have you ever tasted the gumbo in New Orleans, barbecue in Carolina?
Just poke your head out there. Okay, Glenn, that's my favorite. Guys, that's Real Truth Revival with Back to God. I absolutely adore that song. It's a great song, and they do such a great job of it. That's a local group, Randall. Well, the bass singer is from North Myrtle Beach. The rest of them are from around the Carolinas. They're touring the whole country now. That's how good they are.
Yeah,
really
and
good.
Reba McEntire actually did that cover.
She did, yep.
Wow.
Okay, we're going to do a little something different to wrap this up. We got Thanksgiving coming up here in just a few days. But because of that, I've been in this really great mood to talk about getting back to God and taking America back to God and all the wonderful things that have happened, like the Virginia election. Was that not cool or what?
That was great.
That was amazing, totally amazing. So then what happens? Then last night I get a call from a good friend of mine, my former political consulting partner in Northern Virginia. He says, check out the link I just sent you. You're going to hear it in a minute. This is another Loudoun County fiasco. I will read you just the headline, and then we're going to play this little clip. This is from WJLA, Glenn. You remember them?
Oh, yeah. Channel 7.
The header is, some Loudoun parents are not set or have not been notified about the kids' survey about their sex life. A survey in Loudoun County that was done without notifying parents about the kids' sex life. So let's just hear the report and then we'll go from there. Unbelievable.
Well, there is an ad that wants to play first for us.
Oh, there is.
Crate and Barrel that you did not tell me about. Hey, they've got a great deal right now on stuff. You should be a sponsor for Up with America.
Crate and Barrel used to be one of my clients, as I recall.
Well, that's probably why. But
sorry about that, brother.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Parents in Loudoun County are upset they weren't notified their children were taking a survey in school that asked students about their sex life and more. The school system tells us they believe this is an isolated incident at just one school. 7 News reporter Nick Minock explains what happened.
At Loudoun Valley High School in Purcellville, Virginia, at least 180 students were given the Virginia Youth Survey. About 90 students completed it. The problem? Parents were not notified by the school that their children were even taking the survey. The state instructs schools to send notice 30 days before so parents may opt their child out of the survey. The anonymous and optional survey asks students as young as 12 years old specific questions about their home life, dating life, sex life, and more. Questions like, whom have you had sexual contact with? Have you ever had sexual intercourse? How old were you when you had sexual intercourse for the first time? How many people have you had sexual intercourse with? And how many people did you have sexual intercourse with during the past 3 months? One mother telling 7 News her 14-year-old daughter texted her while taking the survey at Loudoun Valley High, saying to her mom she was uncomfortable answering the questions. The mom was livid and sickened by the questions. The Loudoun County mom, who asked not to be identified, told her daughter to skip the questions. But the mom said the damage had already been done. The innocence lost, she said. The school's assistant principal, Bill Golgert, sent a notification to parents saying he regrets this error and that the data collected from the survey has been removed and won't be used. Golgert apologizing for the error and says the school respects the right of parents to be notified in such matters. Loudoun County Public Schools, they're not the only school district administering surveys like this. Fairfax County, Prince William County, and Alexandria City Public Schools are also administering surveys like this.
Me too.
And Purcellville, Nick Minock, 7 News.
It's just unbelievable.
Wow.
Is that not unbelievable?
You know what? They would not be happy with my answers if I had to take that questionnaire today.
I'll tell you, I would not be one of packing if I was sitting in the school board meeting. I can tell you that. Wow. Here's the other thing. They're wrong about something on this report. That what the school is saying they did wrong is that they failed to notify the parents. What's wrong is that they have the survey in the first place. You got to be kidding me. Why are they even doing this, Glenn? I mean, give me a break. Randall, what do you have to say?
It's ridiculous. I cannot understand why you would do that with a bunch of underage kids. It's nobody's business, first off, but I might be outraged.
How old were the kids that were taking
The youngest ones was 7th grade, same age as Sammy, my granddaughter, 12 years old.
Which, Loudoun County, Fairfax County, you don't even know if the parents have had sexual conversations with their children at that point.
I mean, it's just
asking a 12 or 13-year-old if you've had sexual intercourse and how many partners in the past 3 months.
Critical race theory is bad. This is 10 times worse.
Wow.
This is totally out of control.
Yeah.
I am absolutely furious about this. Needless to say, as you know, I still got a daughter living up there and a grandson and friends all over the place. It's just horrifying.
And Loudoun County has already had enough trouble. For them to pile this on top of it?
Unbelievable.
What possessed them to even do it?
I guess they want everybody to move to Myrtle Beach out of Loudoun County.
What possessed them, Randall? Here's what I think. This whole thing is part of this whole communist socialist plot. They're trying to twist the minds of our young people so that they now have them within their grasp, right? Yeah. I really believe that's true. It just makes me sick. Speaking of that, Glenn, we don't have much time left, but I wouldn't mind if we can take a few minutes and go to this whole thing from Hillsdale College about the ruling elite being anti-American, because I think it fits in with where we're going. If there's a cut in there about what I call about the swamp, it's called "Why the Ruling Elite is Anti-American," and he's trying to find it right now.
Well, I think they're incompetent, the ruling elite at the moment.
It's the swamp. I mean, they're running everything right now. That's what's happening. A lot of people are blaming the politicians on it. They deserve to be blamed, but the problem is they have yielded all their power to the permanent people. So let's go to this ruling elite thing from Hillsdale College, and then we'll wrap up the show for another week. Thank you, guys.
State is anti-constitutional. It's the rule of the few for their own sakes. a distinct and insular class of people rather than a trained elite, corrupt and distant from the people whom they rule. The administrative state is openly hostile to the Constitution. It allows for myriad methods of policymaking. In reality, at the end of the day, it represents a return to pre-constitutional government. The administrative state today is, rather than the aristocracy that the progressives hoped it would be, simply an oligarchy. It's the rule of the few for their own sakes, a distinct and insular class of people rather than a trained elite, corrupt and distant from the people whom they rule. They're supported by a coterie of clientele groups who depend upon the modern administrative state for privileges and benefits. The average person in this system is systematically and fundamentally disenfranchised. Policy is not made for his benefit, and he is largely unable to control the machinery of the state. In sum, the administrative state is the antithesis of constitutional government and cannot even live up to the expectations of its progressive founders. The administrative state intrudes upon even the minutest aspects of people's lives. The federal government dictates the amount of water that you can have in your washing machine and in your dishwasher. The federal government dictates the content of the light bulbs that light up your house in the evening. They dictate the composition of the spouts on the gas can that you use to fill your lawnmower. They've determined that the ordinary gas can spout allows for too many fumes to escape. And so instead they created a system which is all but impossible for the ordinary person to use and probably causes more spills anyway.
Listen, we could go on forever. We don't want to, do we? I mean, is that just a nightmare? What we just heard about Loudoun County, and then we're hearing about this, and we've already gone through our entire hour today, so I'm sorry about that, folks. We'll be back next week. I want to say a couple things. We got Thanksgiving coming up in a few days. This is America's Family Day. It's also would have been my father's 103rd birthday, and Jackie would have been gone 13 years. But as we always wrap up the show and say, keep in mind, everybody, it's up to you. All that's necessary for evil to succeed in the world is for enough good men to do nothing. So get out there and do something. Speak up, stand up, shout out, and do something, okay? We've got to save this country, and we don't have much time to do it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Glenn.